Their energy weapons operate on principles we abandoned 50 years ago, Chen continued, his excitement growing as he outlined his discoveries. They use plasma-based systems that require massive power generation and cooling systems. Our particle beams are more efficient and have superior range and penetration. Similarly, their armor consists of layered metallic compounds, while our vessels use reactive molecular barriers that adapt to incoming threats. Vasquez felt a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. Are you saying we have a technological advantage? I'm saying we have a significant technological advantage, Chen confirmed. The Kelari achieve dominance through organization and persistence, not through advanced engineering. They've had no incentive to innovate because overwhelming numbers have always been sufficient. This revelation sparked intense discussion among the human officers. Admiral Cross leaned forward, her strategic mind already calculating possibilities. If we can demonstrate clear superiority in a limited engagement, we might convince them that conquest is impossible without unacceptable losses, or we might provoke them into committing their entire fleet to eliminate the threat we represent, Lieutenant Park pointed out with characteristic caution. Before anyone could respond, Communications Officer Kim's voice cut through the debate. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Kelari commander. She's requesting immediate response to their latest integration offer. Vasquez straightened in her command chair. Put it through. Commander Vexthera's translated voice filled the conference room, carrying harmonics that suggested barely controlled frustration. Captain Vasquez, the Kelari Confederation has granted your species significant time to consider our generous offer. However, your continued resistance threatens the stability that we have maintained for 8 centuries. I am now authorized to inform you that integration is no longer optional. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, Vexthera's tone had shifted to carry the formal cadences of official ultimatum. You have 6 standard hours to power down your weapon systems and prepare for Confederation oversight personnel to board your vessel. Failure to comply will result in the disabling of your ship and the forced integration of your species under emergency protocols. As the transmission ended, silence settled over the conference room like a weight. Each officer understood that they had reached the point where diplomacy gave way to military action. The choice now facing humanity was simple: submit to alien rule or fight for their independence among the stars. Captain Vasquez looked around the table at faces that reflected her own determination. These were the men and women who had volunteered to carry humanity's hopes into the unknown, and she could see in their expressions the same resolve that had driven their species from caves to the stars. Admiral Cross, she said formally, I'm transferring tactical command to you. Dr. Chen, I want detailed analysis of every Kelari weakness you can identify. Lieutenant Park, prepare all weapons systems and alert the crew for combat operations. Cross nodded with grim satisfaction. Captain, I recommend we begin with a demonstration of capability rather than an all-out assault. If we can disable their escort vessels without causing casualties, we might still avoid a full-scale war. As the human officers dispersed to their stations, neither side fully understood that they were about to participate in the first battle that would reshape the political structure of their entire galactic region. Commander Vexthera, following her orders to maintain Kelari authority, began positioning her vessels for what she expected to be a routine enforcement action. Admiral Cross, drawing on humanity's long experience with asymmetric warfare, prepared to show the galaxy that Earth's children would not bow to any authority except their own. The engagement began precisely 6 hours later, when Vexthera transmitted her final warning, and received no response except defiant silence. Following established protocol, she ordered her escort vessels to target the human ship's engines and weapons systems, intending to disable rather than destroy. All vessels, execute disabling attack pattern 7. She commanded, watching as her ships moved into optimal firing positions around the massive human vessel. The first Kelari plasma bolts lanced across space, striking the Prometheus's defensive barriers with energies sufficient to overload the shields of any known vessel. But instead of penetrating and causing critical damage, The coherent energy streams scattered against adaptive barriers that analyzed and countered each attack in real time. Direct hits on target, reported Lieutenant Kixandra with confusion evident in her harmonics. However, sensors indicate minimal damage to human vessel. Dr. Marcus Chen looked up from his xenobiology workstation with barely contained excitement. Chen had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, studying theoretical alien life forms and developing first contact protocols that remained largely untested until now. He was a thin man with graying temples who wore thick-rimmed glasses that constantly reflected the glow of his research displays. "Captain, this is what we came for," Chen said, his voice tight with anticipation. "After 300 years of searching, we finally found proof that we're not alone in the universe." Vasquez nodded slowly, understanding the magnitude of what was happening. The Prometheus represented the culmination of humanity's greatest technological achievement. Built in the orbital shipyards around Jupiter, the massive vessel housed nearly 8,000 crew members and contained the most advanced scientific equipment Earth could produce. Their mission was simple in concept but staggering in scope: find other intelligent life and establish peaceful relations. "Any signs of hostile intent?" Vasquez asked, her military training taking precedence over the excitement of discovery. "Negative, Captain," Park replied. "The station appears to be scanning us, but I'm not detecting any weapons locks or aggressive posturing. They seem as surprised to see us as we are to see them." Communications officer Sarah Kim suddenly straightened at her station. Kim was a linguistics expert who spoke 17 Earth languages fluently and had developed theoretical models for communicating with alien species. "Captain, I'm receiving what appears to be a structured signal. Mathematical progressions, prime numbers, basic arithmetic, classic first contact protocol." Vasquez felt her heart rate increase slightly. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the universe. "Dr. Chen, are you ready to make history?" Chen was already moving toward the communications array, his hands dancing across interfaces designed for this exact purpose. "Captain, I've been ready my entire life, transmitting standard mathematical responses and basic pictographic representations of our solar system." The next several hours passed in a delicate dance of communication as both species worked to establish basic understanding. The Kelari proved to be remarkably sophisticated linguists, and their translation protocols quickly began parsing human language patterns. Similarly, Dr. Chen's xenolinguistic programs started identifying recurring patterns in Kelari communication. Commander Vexthera found herself simultaneously fascinated and disturbed by what she was learning about these newcomers. The beings called themselves humans, and they claimed to come from a solar system thousands of light years away in a region of space the Kelari had never explored. Their vessel was indeed as massive as initial scans had indicated, and they possessed technology that appeared to equal or exceed Kelari capabilities in several key areas. "They call their vessel Prometheus," she reported to High Arbiter Zolkan during one of their regular updates. "They claim to be explorers seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species. However, their ship's power signatures suggest military-grade capability." "What is your assessment of their intentions?" Zolkan inquired, his harmonics carrying subtle overtones of concern. "Uncertain," Vexthera admitted. "They respond positively to peaceful overtures, but their vessel's design indicates a species that has experience with conflict. The humans may represent either a potential ally or a significant threat." As communications became more sophisticated, both sides began exchanging basic information about their respective civilizations. Captain Vasquez learned that the Kelari Confederation controlled a significant portion of this galactic sector, providing protection and guidance to numerous species in exchange for resource sharing and territorial rights. The humans, in turn, explained their own history of exploration and their desire to find their place among the stars. Dr. Chen found himself particularly intrigued by Kelari's social structure. "Captain, they operate on a collective decision-making model that's remarkably efficient. Their entire civilization appears to be organized around the concept of mutual protection and shared resources. "And what do they think of us?" Vasquez asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "They seem to assume we'll want to join their confederation," Chen replied, frowning at his translation displays. "There's an underlying assumption in their communications that all intelligent species eventually seek Kellery protection. I don't think they've ever encountered a species that maintained full independence." This observation proved prophetic when Commander Vexthera finally transmitted the formal invitation that had been inevitable from the moment first contact was established. "Humans of the vessel Prometheus," came the translated message, "the Kellery Confederation extends an offer of protection and membership to your species. You will be granted junior status within our collective, with full rights and privileges as they are earned through contribution to our mutual prosperity. Your military vessels will be integrated into our defense network, and your territorial claims will fall under Confederation oversight." The bridge of the Prometheus fell silent as the implications of this message sank in. Captain Vasquez looked around at her officers, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. After traveling thousands of light years to find other intelligent life, humanity was being offered the chance to become a junior partner in someone else's empire. "Dr. Chen," Vasquez said quietly, "what are the exact terms they're proposing?" Chen studied his displays for several minutes before responding. "Captain, based on the linguistic patterns and cultural context they've provided, they're essentially offering us the status of a protected species. We would maintain some degree of autonomy, but ultimate authority would rest with the Kellery. Our military would be subordinated to their command structure, and our territorial expansion would require their approval." Lieutenant Park looked up from his tactical station with concern evident in his voice. "Captain, I'm detecting movement from the monitoring station. Several smaller vessels are approaching our position. They're maintaining a respectful distance, but they appear to be armed." Vasquez nodded grimly. The Kellery were demonstrating their strength while maintaining the pretense of peaceful negotiation. It was a classic diplomatic maneuver that humans had employed countless times throughout their own history. "Open a channel to the Kellery commander," she ordered. "It's time to give them our answer." Commander Vexthera received the human response with a mixture of surprise and growing alarm. No species in 800 years of Kellery expansion had ever responded to their protection offer with such directness. "Commander Vexthera," came Captain Vasquez's translated voice, "humanity appreciates the Kellery Confederation's offer of membership. However, we must respectfully decline. We prefer to maintain our independence while pursuing peaceful relations and mutual trade opportunities." The silence that followed this transmission seemed to stretch across the void between the two vessels. Vexthera's compound eyes focused on her tactical displays, where the massive human ship continued to maintain its position with apparent unconcern for the Kellery escort vessels that now surrounded it. "Commander," whispered Lieutenant Kixandra, "no species has ever refused Confederation protection. What do we do now?" Vexthera found herself facing a situation that had no precedent in Kellery history. Her immediate impulse was to contact High Command for instructions, but she knew that any delay might be interpreted as weakness by these strange humans who seemed to have no concept of proper galactic order. "Transmit this message," she decided, her harmonics carrying the formal tones reserved for official diplomatic communications. "The Kellery Confederation has provided stability and protection to this region of space for 8 centuries. No species has ever maintained true independence in the face of the dangers that exist beyond our borders. We strongly advise reconsideration of your position." The human response came with surprising speed, as if they had anticipated this escalation. "Commander Vexthera, humanity has survived and thrived through our own efforts for thousands of years. We face the universe with confidence in our own abilities. While we respect the Kellery Confederation's achievements, we choose to chart our own course among the stars." As this exchange continued, both species began to realize that they were witnessing the collision of two fundamentally different philosophies. The Kelari had built their civilization on the principle that survival required submission to a larger protective structure. Humanity, forged in the crucible of Earth's competitive evolution, had developed an entirely different approach based on individual determination and collective self-reliance. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo across the galaxy and forever change the balance of power among the stars. When diplomacy fails, High Arbiter Zolcan stood in the crystalline command chamber at the heart of Nexer Prime, his massive form casting intricate shadows across the bioluminescent walls. As the supreme military commander of the Kelari Confederation, he had overseen the integration of 63 different species into their protective collective. His exoskeleton bore the ritual scarring that marked him as a veteran of 17 different pacification campaigns, and his compound eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had never failed to expand Kelari influence. War Prime Kethmol, he called, his harmonics resonating through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. Report to my position immediately. War Prime Kethmol arrived within moments, his 4 arms already reaching for the tactical displays that materialized at his approach. Kethmol represented the most aggressive faction within Kelari military hierarchy, believing that shows of force prevented more costly conflicts in the long term. His chitinous armor bore fresh modifications that enhanced his natural weapons, and his movements carried the predatory grace of a born warrior. High Arbiter, Kethmol began, his harmonics carrying undertones of eagerness. I have reviewed Commander Vexthera's reports. These humans present an unprecedented challenge to Confederation authority. Your assessment? Zolcan inquired, though he had already formed his own conclusions. They must be brought into compliance immediately, Kethmol replied without hesitation. Every day they maintain independence sends a message to other species that Kelari protection is optional. If word spreads that defiance is possible, we could face rebellion across 17 different worlds. Zolcan's primary breathing spiracles fluttered as he considered this analysis. The War Prime was correct that human independence represented a threat to the fundamental order that had maintained peace for 8 centuries. Yet something about these newcomers suggested that conventional approaches might prove inadequate. Mobilize the 7th Fleet, he decided. Commander Vexthera has already positioned escort vessels around the human ship, but if they continue to resist integration, we may need to demonstrate superior force. Meanwhile, aboard the Prometheus, Captain Vasquez convened an emergency meeting of her senior staff in the main conference room. The chamber was designed to accommodate extended strategic planning sessions, with holographic displays capable of showing tactical information from across entire star systems. The assembled officers represented the best minds that Earth could produce, each selected for this mission based on their exceptional abilities and unshakable dedication to human independence. The situation has escalated. Vasquez began without preamble. Our latest intelligence reports indicate multiple Kelari warships moving toward our position. Dr. Chen, what's your assessment of their intentions? Dr. Chen adjusted his glasses and activated his synapsychology displays. Captain, based on my analysis of their communication patterns and historical data they shared, the Kelari have never encountered sustained resistance to their integration offers. Their entire civilization is built on the assumption that all intelligent species will eventually seek their protection, which means they view our independence as an existential threat to their way of life, completed Admiral Sarah Cross, who had arrived aboard the Prometheus just hours earlier. Cross commanded the Earth Defense Fleet's Rapid Response Division and had brought 3 additional battleships through hyperspace to reinforce humanity's first contact mission. Cross was a veteran of the Martian Independence War, where human forces had learned to fight against overwhelming odds through superior tactics and innovative technology. Her silver hair was cropped short in military fashion, and her pale blue eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had never retreated from a fight. What are our options? Vasquez asked, though she already knew that the choices were limited. Lieutenant Park looked up from his tactical analysis. Captain, we're currently surrounded by 12 Kelari escort vessels, with additional ships arriving every few hours. Our sensor arrays detect at least 30 more warships within 1 day's travel time. And our capabilities? Cross inquired, studying the tactical displays with professional interest. The Prometheus mounts 16 particle beam cannons, 48 missile tubes, and defensive systems designed to withstand concentrated fire from multiple opponents, Park replied. Our escort vessels carry similar armaments scaled for their size. However, we're significantly outnumbered. Dr. Chen interrupted with information that changed the tactical equation entirely. Admirals, I've been analyzing the technical specifications the Kellari shared during our cultural exchange. Their weapons technology appears to be several generations behind our own. They'd focused on quantity and standardization rather than innovation. Explain, Cross ordered, her interest immediately engaged. First contact protocol. The silence of deep space shattered like glass when the proximity alarms began their desperate wailing across Void's edge station. Commander Vexthera's 4 arms moved with practiced efficiency across her control panels, her chitinous fingers clicking against the bioluminescent interfaces that pulsed in rhythm with her racing heartbeat. The Kellari had evolved from hive insects on their homeworld of Nexer Prime, and their technology reflected their collective nature through interconnected systems that responded to bioelectric signals. Report status immediately, Vexthera commanded, her mandibles clicking in the rapid staccato that indicated high stress among her species. The compound eyes that covered half her elongated skull focused on the main display screen, where something impossible was taking shape from the void between stars. Lieutenant Kixandra, her navigation officer, turned from her station with all 4 of her secondary arms trembling. Commander, we have detected a massive object emerging from subspace approximately 2 million kilometers from our position. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. Vexthera's primary breathing spiracles fluttered as she processed this information. Void's edge station served as the outermost monitoring post for the Kellari Confederation, a collection of 17 different species that had submitted to Kellari protection and guidance over the past 8 centuries. Nothing approached this sector without their knowledge, and nothing had ever registered energy readings like these. Display the object on maximum magnification, she ordered, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that all Kellari used when issuing critical commands. The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that defied comprehension. Where empty space had existed moments before, a vessel of staggering proportions now hung motionless against the star field. The ship appeared to be constructed from some kind of metallic alloy that reflected starlight in patterns Vexthera had never seen before. Its hull stretched for what appeared to be several kilometers, with angular surfaces and geometric designs that spoke of advanced engineering principles. Blessed ancestors, whispered Communications Officer Zektheri from her position near the quantum relay arrays. The computer estimates the vessel's length at 4.7 kilometers. Commander, nothing in the galaxy builds ships that large. Vexthera felt her exoskeleton tighten with apprehension. In 800 years of Kellari expansion, they had encountered 63 different intelligent species. Some had joined the Confederation willingly, attracted by the promise of protection and shared resources. Others had required more persuasive demonstrations of Kellari military superiority, but none had possessed technology that could produce vessels of this magnitude. Attempt to establish communication, she decided, knowing that protocol demanded first contact procedures despite her growing unease. Use standard mathematical progressions and universal peace frequencies. As her communications officer began transmitting the standard greeting sequences, Vexthera activated her direct link to High Command on Nexer Prime. The quantum entanglement communicator would deliver her message instantaneously across the thousands of light years that separated her station from the Confederation capital. High Arbiter Zolkan, she began when the connection stabilized. We have an unprecedented situation at Void's Edge. Unknown vessel of massive proportions has appeared in our space, attempting first contact protocols now. The response came within moments, carrying the deep harmonics that marked High Arbiter Zolkan as one of the most powerful Kellari in the Confederation. Commander Vexthera, maintain safe distance, and gather all possible intelligence. If this vessel represents a new species, they must be evaluated for potential inclusion in our protection network. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Prometheus, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of humanity's most advanced exploration vessel and felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. She was a compact woman in her mid-40s, with the kind of steady presence that came from 20 years of command experience in the Earth-Luna Defense Fleet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation military style, and her brown eyes held the calm focus of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions. "Sensor suite complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant James Park from the tactical station. Park was a young officer with Korean heritage who had graduated top of his class from the Mars Naval Academy. "We're detecting what appears to be an artificial structure approximately 2 million kilometers distant. Configuration suggests it's some kind of monitoring station." Before Vexthera could process this information, the human response arrived with devastating precision. 16 particle beams fired simultaneously from the Prometheus, each targeting a different Kelluri escort vessel. The focused energy streams punched through plasma shields and conventional armor like they were composed of tissue paper. Within seconds, half of Vexthera's escort force was drifting powerless in space, their propulsion and weapons systems surgically removed by weapon technology that exceeded anything in Kelluri databases. The human attack had been precise enough to disable without killing, but decisive enough to demonstrate overwhelming capability. "Impossible," whispered War Prime Keth Mole from his position aboard the approaching 7th Fleet. "No species possesses weapons technology superior to Kelluri engineering." But even as he spoke, Admiral Cross was proving him catastrophically wrong. The 3 human battleships that had arrived as reinforcements moved with coordinated precision that spoke of advanced tactical training and superior maneuvering systems. Their weapons reached out across impossible distances to disable Kelluri vessels before return fire could be brought to bear. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 30 minutes. When the firing stopped, 18 Kelluri warships floated powerless in space, while human vessels maintained perfect formation and operational status. Not a single human had been killed, while Kelluri casualties remained minimal due to the precision of the human attack. Commander Vexthera found herself in the unprecedented position of a Kelluri military officer who had been decisively defeated by a supposedly inferior opponent. Her primary task now was to prevent further escalation while reporting this disaster to high command. "Human vessels," she transmitted, her harmonics carrying undertones of shock and grudging respect. "The Kelluri Confederation acknowledges your military capability. We request immediate cessation of hostilities and return to diplomatic negotiations." Admiral Cross's response carried the confidence of someone who had just proven her point beyond any possibility of dispute. "Commander Vexthera, humanity has no desire for conquest or continued conflict. We offer assistance in repairing your disabled vessels and safe passage from our space. In return, we expect recognition of human sovereignty and the right to pursue our own destiny among the stars." As rescue operations began and both sides worked to prevent further casualties, the implications of this engagement rippled outward through quantum communication networks that spanned the galaxy. Within hours, every species in the Kelluri Confederation would learn that the seemingly invincible protectors had been defeated by newcomers who refused to accept subjugation. The age of Kelluri dominance was ending, and the era of human independence among the stars had begun with weapons fire that would echo through history. Neither side yet understood that this first battle would ultimately lead to a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization, with humanity serving as the catalyst for changes that would affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. But in the immediate aftermath of their victory, the crew of the Prometheus and her escort vessels felt only the satisfaction of knowing that they had carried Earth's values successfully to the stars, proving that humanity would find its place in the galaxy not as subjects, but as equals who had earned their position through courage, innovation, and the determination never to surrender their freedom, to any authority except their own conscience.